Does romance kill stories? The answer is yes, absolutely, when it's done incorrectly. And let me explain what I mean. Romance in storytelling can be a very powerful element, but when it's shoehorned into a story, it feels forced and it feels like it doesn't fit, and it detracts from the overall quality of the story. There are two ways romance is usually done, especially in web novels. It's either done correctly or incorrectly. So I'll explain how it's done incorrectly first. When it's done incorrectly, you will notice that the character feels bogged down by the romantic subplot. We see this in a lot of web novels where the character has been written by the author. We have established his goals, the ambitions, we have established the whole story, and then romance is introduced into the story by the author. At this point, instead of the character focusing on the goals that were previously driving him or her, they begin to focus more on the romantic subplots of the story. They begin to focus more on this romantic interest, their likes, dislikes. They begin to exhibit qualities that they could not have exhibited previously with the characters that had been written into them from the start, if that makes sense. If a character had been written to be ruthless, to be decisive, to be evil, whatever the case may be, and a romantic interest is written later, which all of a sudden makes the character do a whole 180-degree turn in terms of behavior without giving a reasonable explanation, then it feels forced and it feels like the author is trying to push it down the reader's throats, basically. That is how it is done incorrectly. When it is done correctly, there is a balance. Usually, romantic elements are just one part or a section of the whole story in terms of the MC or the characters achieving the overall goal of the story. It is done in such a way that the romance fuels the MC in some form. It either fuels their drive for power to gain something within a specific section of the novel, or it fuels some sort of growth in the character, either emotional growth, psychological growth. It basically gives to the story. It takes nothing away from the story. And because it does not transform itself to become the focus of the story, it is a better outcome for the story. So you can kind of see the difference between the two, where when it's done wrongly, the story begins to focus more on the romantic aspects. It begins to take other aspects away from the story, thereby reducing the overall quality. But when it is done correctly, it injects an element into the story, increasing the completeness of the story and making it a very beautiful, usually increasing the quality of the story. I'll give you some examples. With novels like Birth of the Demonic Sword and Supreme Magos, it is done incorrectly. We see established main characters and protagonists at some point being forced into romantic relationships by the author, and it massively brings down the quality of the novels. Especially with Supreme Magos, that novel had so much potential, but after the author had forcefully injected romance into the story, for the past, I think, 1,000 chapters or so, there has been nothing going on in the story. It was one of the most promising web novels. It had one of the best magic systems. It had one of the best written characters in terms of backstory and in terms of depth of the characters. But once that romantic subplot was introduced by the author, everything fell apart. All of a sudden, it becomes more about the romance between the two, where even the romantic interest basically adds nothing to the story. And not even in terms of power-wise, but there is no addition. It feels more like a shackle on the MC than anything else. And that's how you know when romance is done incorrectly in a story. When it is done correctly, it does nothing but add to the story. The characters or the protagonist may gain some form of character growth, character development, either emotionally, psychologically, or in some other aspect based on the nature or based on the romantic relationship introduced by the author. It feels more natural, it feels smoother in situations like that. And we can see it with novels like Red Hat Survey and Trafford's Trading Club, where romance is just one of the elements that make it a great story. Basically, when it's done correctly, it increases the completeness of the story. But when it's done incorrectly, it takes away from the completeness of the story. So one levels it up and the other one brings it down. That is how you would know when it's done correctly and incorrectly. That's why I think, and these are the two ways romance can be done in web novels. It's either done correctly, where it adds to the story, or incorrectly, where it takes away from the story. So guys, if you liked the video, please like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you want to see next, and I will see you on the next one.